Okay, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. As many of you know, my name is Prue Klein, and I'm the wine marketing coordinator here at Wine Communicators of Australia. It is my absolute pleasure to have Kate Shilling, Executive Officer for Ultimate Wine Experiences Australia, joining us today. Kate will be providing an overview of where UWEA are now, their metrics and measures of success. She'll talk about the current demand for wine tourism experiences and the potential future opportunities for wine regions across Australia. We've allowed plenty of time for any questions you may have to be answered at the end of the session. However, feel free to type them into the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen as they come to mind. This webinar will be recorded and a link to the recording sent to you should you wish to watch the content again at a later time. It is now my pleasure to hand over to you, Kate, for today's presentation.
Thank you so much, Prue. That's fabulous. And thanks to everyone for registering and coming along to learn a little bit about Ultimate Winery Experiences Australia's view on our high-value travellers, I guess the new perspective on what's happening in the post-pandemic world. The timing has been really great because we have just last week wrapped up our annual member meeting. Once a year, we get all our wineries together to talk about the year that we've just come through and our grand plans for the future. And we had a big focus on research this year for a range of reasons. And so I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit of an update on where we're at as a Tourism Australia's signature experience collectives, independent from TA, but still very much aligned with them. We've also then going to go through some of the metrics that we look at as measures of success, both from a brand building point of view and the power of our collective marketing, as well as from a business point of view. We set a lot of benchmarks for our wineries through the year so that depending on what their goals are and why they've joined us, and wineries join us for a range of reasons, they've got a clear set of metrics that can measure their success. We've also done some research with Curtin University, and we have some early insights on high-value travellers specific to our wineries that was presented last week. And then I'm going to wrap up with a view on where wine sits within Tourism Australia's massive Future of Demand project, which was so exciting. It was done all through last year, and is the number of times I've seen this research presented, it's every time I walk away thinking that's a really interesting market that we could look at, that's either aligned with wineries or very much coming up as part of a trend that we can leverage. So I'm just going to walk through a few things just for those of you that don't know about Ultimate Winery Experiences. We were invented 10 years ago by Tourism Australia. And the reason we were invented by TA is that the research at that stage was showing that people, when they were deciding to come to Australia, Food and Wine was registering, but they either had no expectations or very low expectations about what Australian food and wine was about. But when they got here, their little minds were blown by the quality, the freshness, the diversity. And so 10 years ago, launched into a campaign called Restaurant Australia. They spent a significant amount of money over several years. And on the back of that, our collective began. The second thing that happened, I guess we had those insights from Tourism Australia, but behind the scenes, we did have our founding group of wineries who knew that if they did something more beyond just a tasting at the cellar door, if they offered opportunities to go beyond the cellar door and experience the Australian wine, that there would be building experiences would allow them to create more memorable moments start to develop a deeper database of consumers who are interested in Australian wine, not just for the short term on their holiday, but into the long term, joining wine clubs, buying wine long into the future. So we've been going for 10 years. Tourism Australia's purpose is to invite the world to experience the Australian way of life. We extend that to invite the world to experience the Australian way with wine. And I have to remember to click on. So my team and I work really closely with our members to help them create compelling experiences that are really built around wine credentials. We want to talk to the members and make sure that they understand what they want to be famous for, what their stories are about, And then we work with the wineries to unlock those wine credentials by layering in and leveraging other unique elements that make those experiences memorable. And it's really about providing access to places that people don't ordinarily get to go, to people that regular people don't get to meet, and often to taste wines that you don't ordinarily get to taste. So those unique experiences are really important. They're really also built around the storytellers, and this is our talent. We have a whole slew of people in each of our wineries who have really worked hard to understand their story and provide a really unique experience. And so we often working really closely with the storytellers to keep updated on what their new stories are as each vintage is wrapped up and wines are released and so on. So we find ourselves 10 years on, independent from TA, as I was saying. We're incorporated. I report into a board of winery. There's four winery directors as well as 4 tourism directors. And we are 10 years old with 30 wineries from 17 wine regions. And this year on the rate sheet, we have 110 bookable experiences. I just want to dive a little bit into what that means when we say bookable experiences. As I mentioned to begin with, these are experiences that go beyond the cellar door. So these bookable experiences range in price from $50 to $1,500. With the 110, we call them the classics. And we distribute those through to our wine-aligned partners, both through the tourism trade and through other partners. But we also do more than, we also connect those classics into wine trails and weekenders. These are both suggested trips into a wine region as well as bookable wine trails. We call them the icons. And then we can customize the classics to create the reserve range. And the reserve range, for a while there, we were calling them the ungooglables because we've already developed these ultimate winery experiences, but we often get asked by super premium travelers as well as by corporates, could we throw in something really unique on top of the ultimate experience? So for us, ultimate plus unique equals ungooglable. You won't find the reserve range on our websites. You won't find it anywhere in any of our channels. They're the sort of things that we can bring out when we get particular inquiries, when we qualify the customer to think, okay, these guys need something ungoogleable. Often for our members, the unique element is something that comes at a very low cost, if no cost, but it is something that our customers are willing to pay for. And I guess that's where we've come from as we've learned more and more about high value travelers, is that our market is very much, I would say 5% of the customers that book an ultimate winery experience are crazy wine people. They can't sleep because they're missing the vintage from 2017 and they want something really specific. Often they don't know what it is. They know what they don't want to taste. They know what they don't want to do. But we're able to, again, really get technical with those crazy wine people and offer those reserve range experiences. But by and large, the bulk of our customer base is a high value traveller, an experience seeker who loves great food and wine, but they love it even more if the wine's being poured by the winemaker who made that wine. They're getting to talk to the owner of the vineyards who may have had those wines in his or her family for generations. And they're getting often to eat food that's perfectly matched because it grew just there. And this whole idea of provenance and terroir coming together is a really important component of our winery experiences. We have 4 pillars that we group the winery experiences in, and taste as the main pillar is really about that food and wine matching. I will point out that not all our wineries have a restaurant on site, so there's more than one way to deliver that experience if that's something that the wineries want to build on. Another pillar is our create pillar, which is really our educational masterclasses, and it's really about having fun and getting really immersed. So often our blending experiences sit in this pillar, those private opportunities to learn more about a particular varietal in a private tasting room and so on. That's where this sits as well. The celebrate pillar is really important. It's largely where the reserve range sits. It's where we have about 8 wineries who have accommodation on site. A whole slew of them have relationships with accommodation houses in the region. And for us, this is about helping our customers to celebrate in style. We do customize these experiences to create something really special, and they're often seasonal. And the discover pillar is something that when we go through this research, you'll realize that actually we understand that for high value travelers, yes, they might love their food and wine, but it's not the only reason they're coming to a wine region. There's a whole lot of other things that they want to discover when they get out of the major gateways. They want to get back to grassroots. So the Discover pillar is where our wineries have really mastered the art of packaging their experiences with other wineries in the region, other services and operators in the region, to really open up that true discovery of their own particular region. So those 4 pillars are really where this all sits. You can see that we, from a price point, I mentioned that we have the 110 experiences range from $50 to $1,500 per person. It varies state on state, as you can see here. But really, it's about a third of them, 25% to a third, 30% are $100 or less. Another 25% are up to $200. Another 25% are up to $300. And then that final quarter of the experiences are the ones that are still bookable, published on our rate sheet, but they're over $300 up to $1,500. The average price point this year, just so you're aware, is $232 per person. That's the price point we have out in market. So that gives you an indicator in terms of where the high value travelers, what they're looking to do. It's more than just a $10 tasting. It's more than just a $25 premium tasting. We're about offering that opportunity to really discover more about what's going on beyond the cellar door. To give you an idea of who, we've had some new wineries drawn in the last 12 months. So you can see here, just with some of our newies, the types of experiences they're offering. 10 Minutes by Tractor is really about unlocking their terroir with their masterclass. They then link in an experience with gastronomy in their beautiful restaurant. Artisans of Barossa are really about bringing the Grenache to the fore. And as I mentioned, wine credentials are really important. We are not scared of going hard on a particular variety if that's what the winery wants to be known for. And we find that even if there are high value travelers that are not too sure what particular variety is their absolute favorite, they're willing to give it a go and learn more when they do an experience. So there's lots of ways that we can bring that to life. We've got different levels here with Swinging Bridge in Orange, who's one of our newer members. They're doing a lot with food and wine pairing, but at different levels. And this is a really great way of showcasing how with the Savour experience, there's certain labels and varietals are brought out, but with the Indulge, they bring out those back vintages and so on. And that Indulge experience is, I think, around $150 per person. So again, we're really opening up the cellar doors to show what's on offer behind them. Stanton and Colleen is our first Rutherglen winery. Really excited to have this world famous region represented in our collective. And again, as far as the heritage story, the blending story, and these private spaces, Stanton and Colleen has this on steroids, and it's really going to be really interesting to see bringing in a total focus on the fortifieds as well as these Portuguese varietals. That's adding another string to our bow as a collective. So you can see here where our wineries are all located. Our heartland is very much South Australia and Victoria, where we have 9 and 8 wineries respectively. But we see real opportunities for growth in all wine regions at the moment. And there's been a lot of conversations as we've refreshed our criteria for membership and really talked to our board about what our plans for growth are in the next couple of years. So as I mentioned, being 10 years old, it's really been an opportunity, I guess, for us to really recalibrate and work out where we want to be in the next 10 years. And from that, we're setting our benchmarks and looking to see what it is that where we've come from. We've been gathering monthly stats from our wineries for the last 3 years, since January 2019. It's probably more than 3 years, actually. And for us, when we get 4 sets of stats every month that really start to help us create some markers and measures of success. A big one for us is the average booking value. For those that remember early in this presentation, the average price points we've got out in market are $232 per person, but the average booking value at the moment is $141 per person. That is up 60% since before COVID. And we really, I think the pandemic was tough, but there are a lot of positive takeouts from that period as well. And one of them is what people are prepared to pay as an average across our portfolio. Now, this varies. I do break this down. I kind of like this one just because that's how the last couple of years have felt at different times. But I do break it down by state, and I then just to have a look, so to give you an indication, I guess, of what's been happening over the last 12 months, you can see the range of price, the average booking value does vary per region and per state. And it's really interesting to see, I guess, there's no right way when it comes to what this means, because I think for us, when you look at, just to go back to this, some of the average booking values are lower than the others, but then the volume and the number of people that are coming into each of these regions with the lower levels really indicates, I guess, what high value travelers, what appeals to them when they get to the region, what types of experiences they're looking for, and then how much they're going to pay for that. So there's volume and there's average value, and all our wineries have a different strategy when it comes to looking at building success for their wine tourism businesses. We also get the wineries to tell us we know how many guests are booking experiences each month, and we look at that as a percentage of how many cellar door visitors there's been over this period. And it was really interesting through COVID, because prior to COVID, on average, 1 in 10 visitors to the cellar door had arrived already with a pre-booked experience. And when you think about what tasting is, that the ones that haven't booked were just paying $10 for their tastings. The ones that had pre-booked were paying at least $50, if not more, $140 more recently. Over COVID, because of the restrictions and the rules and the checking in and so on, this rose to over 30% across most regions, the ones that were open. But when we look here at the last 12 months by state, you can see that the take-up is very different. So on average, we're still at 1 in 10 visitors to the cellar door have booked an experience. But there are some states where they're getting way more visitors, but not that many have booked an experience. But the ones that have booked are paying twice as much as some of the others that haven't. So South Australia is really remarkable at the moment. Over 1 in 5 customers who are arriving at the cellar door have booked an experience before they get there. So, but then it's interesting to think, okay, what's happening in New South Wales, Victoria, and Western Australia particularly, because they are really low. And so strategically, we're looking to see how we can work with the wineries in those regions to increase that percentage. And we're also, as a Brains Trust and as a collective, we talk a lot to our South Australian compadres about what are they doing differently, and how can we all learn from that about high value travellers and getting them to arrive ready to spend more. The wine sales is just something I put in here. It was the Corona coaster. It was really messy. We get the wineries not to give us their actual sales, but to let us know whether they were up or down on the same period last year. As I said, this just is a really visual version of the Corona coaster. But overall, our wineries are with us because they want to sell more wine. It was interesting looking, if I break the last 22-23 financial year into 2 halves, the first half of the year, we were still up on average 603%, which is crazy because it was comparing with a period that was either just coming out of lockdown or there was a whole lot of reasons why it was so high. But on average at the moment for the second half, we're still up by 7.2%. But you can see here it's been, again, a bit of an interesting dip there as we got into the autumn. And I suspect that's because we are comparing with a period where just the numbers were insane. And right now, just anecdotally last week, the wineries were all reporting that people are paying more on experiences at the moment. They really want to indulge themselves and spend some time when they get to a winery, but they're not buying the wine that they were during COVID. Noting that they were really accelerated and elevated levels there. So again, a takeout as we start to balance the ship getting into the next financial year. We do a business snapshot. At the moment, this represents 72% of all the members' results because I've got some stragglers who take some time to send them the final stats in. But you can see here our average guests who are booking experience is up 20% compared with the previous year at 354 guests per winery per month. And when you think about we are appealing to high value travellers, their spend is up to $141. It's on par with last year. So we're really happy with how that's tracking, and it gives you a view on where we're at as a business. We also look to reports from our partners. We have wine-aligned partners and trade partners. So we're looking at stats that are coming out of our Qantas partnership, which is relatively new. The average booking value, we're not able to share a lot of it, but I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that if you book an Ultimate Winery experience with us through Qantas, you do, the customer gets 3 points for every dollar. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes for that, but we are able to gain some stats and also access, I guess, test the different segments within the Qantas frequent flyer database, which is pretty mind-blowing. We can also look at the sales of wine and the different ways that we're reporting with Qantas. So this is a very early stage for us with our relationship with them. But again, it is giving us insights on the appetite for high-value travellers to do more, to spend more on experiences. And we feel very confident about where this is going in the future. The other thing that we can measure is, of course, we do regular content marketing with Qantas. So we can look at engagement if we're looking at the top of the funnel there in terms of people are engaged about going to wine regions. They're going to hopefully book with Qantas to get there and then book their experiences. So we're able to, in the future, follow them all the way down through that funnel from consideration to conversion. We also have a lot of partners. We've got 12,000 distributors on our database, but we're very strategic in who gets what in terms of the experiences and the commission levels. But the OTAs give us really particularly great reports, and it's really interesting to compare what's happening in the domestic market versus what's happening with OTAs who are starting to bring in customers from overseas, and just seeing that average booking value. And I guess the understanding about the appetite and the appeal of the wine regions, and particularly the opportunity for those regions that are further away from the gateway that pre-COVID would have been considered a little bit too far to go and book an experience. We're finding that that's not the case. So when we break down who's most engaged and bringing high-value travellers to us, the premium buyers, it's no surprise there that you can see the premium buyers are really engaged when we send out our regular comms, as well as the DMCs. And for those in the wine world that don't know the travel acronyms, we're filled with them. We speak a whole different language, but DMCs is destination marketing companies. They're effectively ground operators who operate and specialise in particular regions. I think it's really interesting to see that in general, no surprises that the inbounders, the ITOs, were really not engaged over COVID because there was nothing to be engaged about. But the onliners, the OTAs, have been really engaged throughout. So we can see here who's interested, and we can see here also who's interested in going that bit further and getting trained on our Ultimate Winery experiences. So we work really closely with the other signature experience collectives, Great Walks, Luxury Lodges, great fishing experiences, great golf, and so on. And we send out to Tourism Australia's database of Aussie specialists a regular module, updating them on what's going on with our winery experiences. And it's really interesting. I put this one in because I know you can see here with Australia has stayed strong in that green bit is the first couple of years of COVID. We're still adding on new Aussie specialists, but it's really interesting to see India. They had a big focus during COVID, and they're currently our #1 most engaged, have completed the most training modules with us specific to the Ultimate Wineries. And then it's all well and good to think, okay, these people know about it, they're engaged in reading our EDMs, but who's actually booking at the moment? This is a summary of the booking sources for us. So again, high value travellers can choose. We want to make sure that our winery experiences are wherever a high value traveller wants to book. And so that can mean, yes, we've made sure that the experiences are bookable on our members' sites and on our site. But most importantly, we want to make sure they're out there with each of these different segments. And I find this really interesting because the online, the OTAs are really high value travellers are definitely using online travel platforms to make bookings of our experiences. Group series is high, but it's specific really to South Australia and Western Australia. This for us is the small group touring. We don't specialise in the big 48-seater coaches. That's not our jam. We do way more of those small group tourings, particularly those that come off cruise ships. 20 or less is a really interesting group that we can help out our trade partners with, particularly if they come Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, midweek and in the middle of the day. So we're finding that there's real growth there, and we're looking to see what we can do to work with them to grow, see that growth in other states where they don't have as many set departures. But the other really fascinating thing is high value travellers often will get themselves to a region, they'll find somewhere fabulous to stay, and then they'll say, hey, where can I book? And so they're looking, our big source for us and a growing source for us is local operators. Those local recommendations are really important. And I guess it's those insights as our customers come and park themselves in a region, they're going to be looking for local recommendations. So for those that are in the wine world on the webinar, I'd be really checking out your local favourite Airbnbs, your favourite hotels and so on to make sure they're aware of what you're doing and when you're open and what you offer at the cellar door and hopefully beyond. Tourism Australia obviously is a massive spreader of the word when it comes to our experiences as well. And so we, I guess, as a measure of success, the number of times we're asked to be included with Tourism Australia as industry leaders, as in front of their various customer bases in overseas markets, that for us is a really interesting measure. And we've been providing a lot of wine for various events, particularly in the UK in the last 12 months and the US. But we're noticing a few new opportunities that are coming into the mix, both within Australia and particularly in Asia. So for us, of course, then the other channel that we're looking for when we're building that brand is what are the measures of success as we build our profile? We look to the stats and we see continual growth, albeit off a pretty small base for us. And it's something that we do internally. We don't spend any money on our internal marketing channels. We have a team that looks after them instead. But socials are really engaged, as are our blogs and our EDMs. We work really closely with the media, and I know there's a couple of familiar names from the media there so hi to you guys. Trav Media is a really important partnership for us, and it's a way for us to really keep in touch with travel and lifestyle journalists. There's 2,500 across on their database. We get access into their international opportunities as well. And it's been really interesting because sending out a media release is one thing, but also just tracking journos who after as soon as they could, they went overseas, but they're back and they're still really engaged in looking for unique opportunities in their own backyard. And I'm really chuffed with how we have a target list of journos that we work really closely with. And I think they really get what's on offer for their particular audience and their readership, and they're willing to spread the word about that. And of course, we've got the opportunity for us, a measure of success is what we do with sorry, I'm just looking at the time, how our wineries themselves within the collective are advocating one for each other, because that's a really important recommendation, both within the region and also from region to region. And so there's been really great examples and take up from our wineries and from their wine club members when we do what I would call a swap shop. Montalto and Voyager Estate in May spent 2 weekends. The Montalto winemaker and chef went over to Voyager 1 weekend in May, and the next weekend the Voyager winemaker and chef came over to Montalto, just to showcase, I guess, again, thinking about the wine credentials and how not all regions, this, are the same. And, in this case, it was about comparing the Chardonnays and the maritime climates and what have you. But it was a really interesting way to think about high value travellers, build their loyalty, and then offer them that little bit more. And these have both this is one of several that have happened over the last 18 months. One that's coming up is Printhy Wines in Orange and Joseph Cromie doing a bit of a compare and contrast, which I think would be an amazing experience when you consider that they both specialise in sparkling. So I reckon that for a high value traveller wanting to learn more about Australian sparkling, these sort of events are really important and things that we're able to extend upon. So that's really the measures of success and what we've noticed when it comes to high value travellers internally and through our own direct channels. I wanted to just wrap up with 2 significant pieces of research that we've put into place. We got insights on the first one, which is what we call our Persona Project, which was about the segmenting our high value travellers. We've worked with Curtin University. It's not my research, so I really want to spell out that this is just stuff that Ben Thomas, who is the professor at Curtin University in Western Australia, shared with us last week. But it's a really interesting thing to start to get those top-line insights, and we are looking to get more extensive insights as this goes on. He's currently slicing and dicing the data, but he was able to share these with us last week. So we went out, each of our wineries got their own survey that was specific to the experiences that they had put together, and they were able to then do post-experience, post-visit. So it went out to people who went to their restaurant if they had one, who just did a tasting, to get a bit of a view on what these customers thought, how much they were spending, and what they looked like. So I just moved that. So the data and the metrics that were collected were about visitation and purchase, their perceptions. They were able to give feedback on that, bit of psychographics in their behaviour, what they did on socials, and their top line demo as well. And so it's really interesting. And again, this is not my, this is data about our wineries, but it's not, it's just top line at this stage. But it was really fascinating to see, you know, we were comparing what happened for those, I guess, the customers who did what Ben called a common service offering versus a premium experience. And 32% of the database were booking those experiences, 44% were keen to engage in that, and 64%, most importantly, were purchasing wine at the end. They were also, and then we just got some top line stats on what these customers looked like from I guess how old they are, Gen Z, Gen X, and so on, compared with benchmarks of pre-existing research. You'll notice that, yeah, it was interesting, the millennials and the baby boomers, no surprises there. I love the silent generations, I guess well, definitely my parents, who, yes, are not necessarily going out to wineries, but it's an interesting terminology every time I look at that. Where they're from is really interesting. And again, there was no benchmarks against this because this was specific to our wineries, but we had a decent amount of 8% of international, 8% doing just visiting were international, but 9.6 were doing experiences. More interstate metros were doing tastings than experiences, but there wasn't a lot in it. Same for the regionals. And then those, I guess, your intrastate, your locals, they've become very familiar with their own backyard, and they're doing more there, which is really great to see. So both intrastate, metros and regionals were doing a little bit more in that premium space. And then the repeat visitors, again, slightly more for repeat visitors who booked an experience, and they were posting. And I really love the Net Promoter Score. We've got a couple of versions of this, but definitely for those that don't know Net Promoter, this is, you know, would you recommend? And it really takes the cream from the crop. It's pretty vicious. I think it's 8 and above. So 78, a Net Promoter Score of 78 is really fantastic for those customers that were booking an experience, and even for those that were just visiting our wineries. And a score of 65 was really fabulous as well. So yeah, I've heard in the context of the last week that I believe that a lot of companies just getting into the low 40s is high. So I think for us, we on this call, being involved in food and wine, we've already got people who are more engaged. So it's good to see that so high. Then the second piece, so that was kind of what the early insights are on high value travelers. They are, for those that are booking an experience, for those that are just visiting our members in particular, they were 4 times as much, they were spending 4 times as much as previous research had shown in the past. And for those that were booking an experience, it was 5 times as much. So they're the stats that we are really, really chuffed with. And we're looking forward to seeing how that's going to break down as Ben does further slicing and dicing into, you know, the differences beyond just the demographics, how old, where they live, into that real psychographics about what appeals. So watch this space. And then, how am I going for time? I'm doing okay. And then the last piece is some research that Rob Dugan, who's the head of insights and strategy at Tourism Australia, shared with us last week. Now, this one reason why I'm here is Prue and Angus were talking to Tourism Australia about who could come and speak about this future of demand to you on the webinar, and they shuffled me forward because we're really close to this research. We sometimes, on some days, we call this the Wheel of Fortune. On other days, we call it the Wheel of Death because it is incredibly complicated. But the reason I asked Rob over to Margaret River is I've heard him speak a few times about what you can do with all these segments. And I think there's 143 experiential segments here. And I think it's really interesting seeing kind of that Amazon approach. If you've liked a winery experience, you will like something, you're likely to like something else, and vice versa. If you love going on holidays to research your family history, you're probably going to love winery experiences. So it's really going to help all of us on this call, because I've got you can all access this research independently, really understand who the customer is right now. They spent, I think it was 12 million on this research. I'm not sure, but it was a lot. And I think there's huge opportunity for us to use this in greater depth. Both we're going to use it as a collective, TA use it in all their marketing and their media spend. But I think for each operator and each industry member out there in wine regions, you have the opportunity to use it too. So some of the insights that Dukes shared with us were just where we've come from 2019. And you can see here, this is they were firmly focused on high value travellers, but not all visitors were coming to Australia for tourism. And the clear example of that is China, who in 2019 was the biggest market, but more than half of that was coming because it was education based. So that's where we've come from. Where we are now, compared 2023 to 2019, the blue is 2019 and the orange is where we ended up at the year ending March 2023. These are the markets that have come back. Now, Tourism Australia do have these stats for Australia, but Dukes was just really talking about high value travellers coming from overseas markets, which I think is really key, because as borders are opening up, as aviation gets balances, we get capacity and we get those airfares back to a more reasonable level, there's going to be a huge opportunity. But I think we're going to be strategic in picking the markets that already have an appetite to come to our wine regions and also have an appetite to book experiences. But you can see here, of course, the UK and the US, that New Zealand, Singapore, India is really high, but that's in general, that's not specific to wine regions. But across all their 15 markets, there's definitely different levels and different opportunities to get back maybe to those 2019 levels, though whether, particularly with China and where that sits within the wine world and the tariffs and so on, strategically, that might not be a goal that you are going for. So you can see here the other piece, and I mentioned right at the beginning, 10 years ago, the research was showing that people had they had low expectations, but when they arrived, but when they left, having been, whether they'd gone through an aquatic and coastal experience, seen some wildlife, natural beauty, been on a family-friendly holidays, looked at sustainable tourism and so on, Australia really over-indexes. It continues to over-deliver, and in food and wine, it's up 28 points. So you can see that, that 25% think it's going to be great, but actually, that might not sound right. I've got the better way to describe that. So that's because it's not about percentages, but it lifts is probably the best way to say that. And I can dive into that a little bit more, but it's really great to see that we still have this massive opportunity to showcase our amazing wines in whether it's in the context of food or not. There's still an amazing opportunity to both wow high value travellers and then get them to stick with you through thick or thin. The Net Promoter Score with Tourism Australia is still significant as well. And again, that's since Australia is really, it's really risen in terms of what will people recommend Australia since COVID. So to just run through some of the insights before I wrap up on the Wheel of Fortune, you can see that it was basically, I think there's a better explanation here. They basically laddered up all these experiences into 7 different segments. We as wineries sit in the sensory segment. And so when you look here, you can see it kind of in this bottom right. And Dukes, for the purposes of our meeting last week, he pulled out a few experiences that are on the rise and just to see what's happening with those particular segments. So yes, we ladder up, and yep, it can get really complicated. This kind of blows my mind a little bit, because these are all the levels of experiences and how they rate. And within here, there are winery experiences. So you can see Meet the Maker for food and drink. You can see visiting a wine growing region. There's lots of different ways, places where these our experiences and wine aligned experiences sit. But I'm going to leave you to go through that in your own time. What I was more interested in, and what I'd seen Tourism Australia do before, is to look at a specific segment and see what the affinity is from other experiences. So you can see here people who liked winery experiences also were really interested in tasting tours, winery stays, I should say. They were really interested in tasting tours and food and wine pairing and staying in renowned regions and so on. Rob was really big on how many of them like spa treatments across all segments. So I think that's really interesting that we can start to think, okay, if we've got people going to a spa, are they going to be, should we look at them and start to talk to that spa and see what you could do as far as a partnership goes, whether it's a package or what have you, but just making sure you get to know the locals in your region, because there will be affinities with other experiences that are happening there. Those interested in winery stays, it goes back the other way as well. You can see that people who like wine, beer and tasting tours also like winery stays. So this is people who like winery stays, what else they're interested in. This is what other experiences are there. So glamping is on this side. People who like glamping also like winery stays. People who like cooking schools also like winery stays. So there's a lot that's going on and a lot to consider when we think about high value travellers. Have I moved on? Yes, we've got tasting tours and winery stays. There's other things here. There were a lot of different ways that we can slice and dice that. And then we've got, he had put them all on 3 pages, 3 different segments all on 1 page, just to see who was interested, what other groups were interested in meeting the maker. This is where I got the family history holiday one from. A lot of people who are interested in Indigenous experiences also are interested in wine-aligned experiences. So people who like Indigenous performances like to stay in wine-growing regions. And we even extended this out to farm experiences, because across the country, ag tourism is definitely growing in terms of interest and product development. And as we all know, we're farmers on the front line here in the wine world, and we were there first. So I think people are looking to see what we as wine producers who have made that foray into wine tourism, the lessons we've learned, what we understand about our customer base, and what we're going to do next with all that information is going to be really important. So just some other things that came out of it without going into too much detail. Market by market, you can see here winery stays were relatively niche with lots of domestic demand and a real mix of appeal. Australia, we're the #1. So if you're on this side, it means that we're ranked 28 out of, I think it was out of 100 plus experiences. Winery stays were ranked 28. In Indonesia, they're ranked 85, just to explain that slide. For the volume is clearly with the US, but there's some real opportunities with domestic and some Asian markets that can really provide growth at the moment in terms of the volume of interest. So as part of this research, Tourism Australia, we're looking at the size of the value of the market, but the size of the market as well was really important. And then for people on tasting tours, Dukes was like, they're pretty wealthy and they're really keen on Australia. And there's some real interest, no surprises from our core markets there, as they are the ones that opened up first. So, I mean, there's a big so what at the end of this, but I guess for you guys, if you're here, you're interested in what high value travellers are doing, where they're going and what you know what to do with that information. So I think there's things you need to consider in terms of if you're going after a particular market, what's the size and the value and the future growth, how their proximity to us, the proportion of leisure, and then of course, if you've got your massive marketing budgets, no, we definitely don't, but what it costs to market to those particular audiences in those countries. So have a think about that as well, because I thought that was a really, the stats are well and good, but what are you going to do with this stuff moving forward is also really important. And then of course, I think I'm wrapping up now. I just wanted to say, this is where all that research from Tourism Australia comes from. They have 143 experience fact sheets. So whether you've got a winery stay, a tasting tour, there's so much really cool information here. I love the way that Dukes was able to kind of connect in that Amazon style. Well, if you like this, you're probably going to like that. So that recommendation model, I think, is really interesting, both for us as a collective, as well as for you guys if you're independent out there. But that's the QR code, and don't be put off. Ring them, email them, and ask them to talk you through it, because they really want this research to add value to operators of all sizes in the industry, and I love them for it. So I'm just going to wrap up from us. If you want to find out more, we are Ultimate Winery Experiences, and I think, yep, that's it. For some reason, my email is underlined, but Tori's isn't. So if you're interested in finding more from a wine side, that's my email. If you're media, Tori Johnson manages our media, and she's there to help you out as well. So that's it. Thank you very much. How's that? 45 minutes, not bad.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kate. And for everyone joining us now, we're going to start Q&A. So type in those questions to the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and I know Kate will be very pleased to answer them for you. But one of my questions was actually answered on that second to last screen, because obviously I imagine you could most probably talk for another hour about some of those tourism insights that you shared there. So great to know that Tourism Australia do make them readily available to, I guess, the wine industry. And yeah, I'm personally a huge advocate of everything you do, Kate. Back 8 years ago, I was working for a winery that was one of the first members of Ultimate Winery Experiences. So well done for everything you do for the industry. It's fantastic. So we do have a question in here, and I think, you must really answer this throughout the presentation, but maybe just to consolidate it a little bit more. This person's just asking, what defines a high-value traveller from an Ultimate Winery Experiences perspective, rather than, I guess, the general stats?
I think for us, and yeah, you're right, it was referenced, we want to find out more and more about them, but the top, we're targeting people who really value the opportunity to go beyond the cellar door. So people who want to meet the winemaker, who want to understand more about the local terroir, the provenance, and so on. And it's not necessarily, I mean, you've seen it kind of has been answered, to be honest, because you've got that demographic profile that's growing and the more research that sits within that. But we are targeting people, if they see the value in going beyond the cellar door, they're going to see the value in the wines as well, and they're going to spend more on wine. So it's hard to sort of, if you came back from that, it's probably for each of you in the wine side, it's those people that are spending more than a certain level in wine every year, every visit, whatever your metric is, depending on what your wine's worth. But we are looking at the value of the experience as well.
Absolutely. A great questions come through. What is it that South Australian wineries are doing to have a much higher percentage of experience bookings? Great question, Caroline.
Yeah, it is so interesting, isn't it? I think there's a couple of, this is my theory, and I reckon we've got a lot more, there's more experiences in general in South Australia at a wider range. And I think that if you look at the experiences that are $100 or less, so in that 50 to 100, there's probably, it's not as big a jump for a customer who's thinking, I'll do a tasting, I'll do a premium tasting. And then it's like, God, it's only an extra $30 and I'm doing a proper experience. And I think there's probably the jump up or the lead, it's not that much of a jump to go from a premium tasting to a full-on experience. And there's a lot of, all our wineries are able to bring that lead-in offer of $100 or less to life in different ways. But I think it's probably the volume of experiences, and there's not that much daylight between a premium tasting and an experience.
And I guess the, the density of wine regions and producers that are down here in South Australia most probably. So, impacts on those booking stats. Next question from Suzanne. Are you finding that consumers/tour organisers are inquiring or making decisions based on winery sustainability practices? That's a huge topic.
It is. The answer is in general, yes. And there's a whole other piece that TA do around sustainability. And we have it as a criteria for membership as well. I think right now the answer is yes. I think they are choosing to, if they've got a choice between A and B has a solid sustainability story to tell. And by that, I mean a really authentic, well backed up story. I think they will choose that particular winery. And I can see it because for us, sustainability is the role our wineries play in sustaining the land and their wine production practices, but it's also really important in the role that they play, community sustainability, career pathways and so on. I think that role is really important as well. And it's definitely the overarching trend is, yes, if people have a choice, this is what they'll do. And often that means if Australia is not presenting their sustainable credentials, they'll go to Argentina or Italy or somewhere else as well. So I think TA has been really thinking really deeply about how to bring these sustainable stories to life, understanding that everyone's it's progress, it's not perfection. And so we definitely are seeing that, particularly from the community point of view. Hope that answers it.
And from a Tourism Australia sort of insights stats perspective, is there a different area that you could direct people to that are wanting to find out more about that sustainability and tourism space?
Yeah, I think every state, DNSW, shout out to them, have done a lot of work in getting their industry directly engaged with. So if you're a New South Wales winery, I think they've done a really good job at that. I would start with your state tourism body or your regional one and see what they're doing, because there's the sustainability scorecard that TA has put in place as a partnership with Ecotourism Australia. On our end, we're looking a lot at what we do with Qantas, particularly with the green tier and the SWA accreditation and membership, and that moving that forward as well. But yes, I would tourism.australia.com, key in sustainability, and sit back and watch the options grow.
Fantastic. What's your advice on how to price your high value traveller experiences so the offer is both appealing and profitable?
Well, firstly, don't do it if it's not profitable. I think it's a bottle of wine conversation. It's work out what. I think it's a question of, it depends where your region is in going along this journey, and regions that can be really close to each other have a different level of confidence in pricing. And I think it's not so much that you're worth it. Customers, if they're coming to your region, are really looking to do something deeper. So for me, the advice is work out your base costs, put your ops margin on there, and then start to go out and do your research as far as what other wineries are doing. Look, check out our site. But you'll see what other experiences are available there. One thing, and also don't get nervous about the locals won't come because it's too expensive, because they will come. They might not come all the time, but the whole idea is to drive new visitors and new people coming in so that they then become repeat visitors, but they're coming from further afield. So thinking about that pricing, I would always look at pricing so you're covering your costs, but then also look at the cost of marketing. One stat I didn't put in there is we coach and consult with our members to add on that cost of distribution. We don't give away commission to everyone, but we have always got it priced at that level. And at the moment, 60% of bookings that are made of our experiences are made direct. So the members have priced it so that if someone does book through Qantas or Red Balloon or Abercrombie and Kent, you can pay out the commission accordingly, but you're also able to, for 60% of the time you keep that as extra margin. So look outside your own backyard, don't price it based on what the locals would pay, because and think about your high value traveller market.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. These questions specifically, I think, in regards to Ultimate Winery Experiences Australia, is there a ceiling to the number of members in your offering? More better? Question mark.
We are looking to grow, but we've as part of the last sort of turning 10 made us, we did go back to the drawing board in terms of what our criteria for membership are. So the answer is no, but we are looking to be Australia's leading wine tourism collective, and we have a set of 6 criteria that are built around that. And I guess the biggest difference from where we've come from 10 years ago is there is a difference between hospitality and experience, and they're both amazing. But just, I can think of some beautiful wineries that have a lovely restaurant, but they're actually not offering experiences. And so for me, and they might have great accommodation on site, but what is the story you're telling? Coming back to your wine credentials is absolutely where our heartland is, and being able to build the experience around that wine story. And then, of course, layering in great places to stay and eat as well. But it's, definitely leading with the wine credentials. I'm happy to send, if someone emails me, I can send them. The new.
Find out a bit more.
It's a really heavy document. I cannot work out how to send it as a light attachment, but I will.
No worries. Well, I think we're going to wrap up. I think we're almost at an hour. Thank you again, Kate, for your time and insights into the whole world of wine tourism. And hopefully everyone that's joined the call is leaving inspired and got some ideas as to their next step forward with their own Ultimate Winery Experiences journey. So I just want to highlight that we've got our next WCA webinar coming up on Tuesday, the 12th of September. It's all going to be about using ChatGPT and other AI, presented by the team at Purple Giraffe Marketing. So stay tuned for that. Registrations will be live on our website in the next few days. For all WCA members, all recordings from previous webinars are held on our website under the education section, so feel free to go on there and browse. And if you have any suggestions on webinar topics you'd like us to cover in our webinar program, we're now looking more at 2024. I'd love to hear from you. Email me directly at wca@winecommunicators.com.au. Thanks again for joining us. I hope to see some of you at the WCA Sydney Royal Wine Show Trophy Winners Lunch this Friday. If not, stay tuned soon. Thanks so much. Thanks, Kate.